the right seat?
Okay. Oh, wrong direction. Is it on?
This one's on.
Ladies and gentlemen, can you hear me? We'll go ahead and get started. My name is Kirsten Totfest. I'm the president of the League of Women Voters, and we are pleased to present tonight's candidate forum. Forgive me if I stumble a little bit. I've kind of forgotten my script. I printed it off, and somehow it did not make it in my bag, so apologies if I messed this up a little bit. The League of Women Voters is a nonpartisan political organization. We do not support or endorse any candidates, but we do present information for you all to help decide who to vote for on Tuesday, April 2nd, would be the election. You will have early voting on this Friday from 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. and Monday from 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. That's April 1st at the County Administration Building at 6th and Duck. And then on Tuesday, April 2nd, you will visit your local precinct. We will have a timer this evening. Each candidate will get 3 minutes for opening statements, 90 seconds each to answer the questions, and everyone will answer the same questions, and 2 minutes for closing. And they will be warned at, probably for the opening, we'll use the 1 minute paddle with 1 minute left, 30 seconds left, 15 seconds left, and when you see the red stop card, we ask you to stop. And I'm not afraid to interrupt you guys, so. Okay. We will be deciding seat 1 and 2. The Stillwater is not a ward system, so everyone is elected at large. So voters will be asked to vote for one candidate for seat 1 and seat 2. Seat 1, we have Micah Lefebvre, Joe Weaver. Seat 2, Gina Noble and Philip Pina. Questions will be taken from the audience on the 3x5 cards. If you come up with a question, just raise your hand. We'll get a card. A league volunteer will get a card to you, write it down, hand it back to the league volunteer. They will be screened for personal attacks and personal issues. So each candidate will be answering all the questions. We'll now hear from the candidates on opening statements. And Micah will go, let's see, Joe will go first on opening.
Sure, thank you. You ready?
Go ahead.
All right.
Fire away.
Well, my name is Joe Weaver, and I'm running for City Council for re-election to seat 1. I appreciate the opportunity to be here, and I appreciate the League for taking the time to do this. This is a great public service that you do. Getting information out to the public and arranging this takes effort, and I appreciate what you're doing and the effort you put in. And thank you to all of you for coming out tonight and those that are watching and going to the trouble to become informed. I really appreciate that. You know, it's really hard to believe that 3 years have gone by and that I find myself in the position of asking you to vote for me again. It just seems like yesterday that I was elected to the first term. I can tell you that it's been an absolute honor and a pleasure to serve this community. I love this community. I love Stillwater. People ask me all the time, why are you running? Why are you doing this? It's really nothing more than we all have a responsibility, and we all do give back to our community. We all find ways to serve, and this is just simply a way for me to serve a community that I care deeply about. It's about as simple as that. I've lived in Stillwater my entire adult life. This is my home. This is where I'm from. I'm not from OSU. I'm not from someplace else. This is my home. Hopefully, I intend to leave this place a little better than I found it. I think that's what we all want to do. I want to do this for my family. I want to do it for my kids and my grandkids, just as you want to do the same. I'm serving for no other reason than that. I get asked often, what issues are you trying to solve? Why are you wanting to be on the council? There's always going to be new issues. I'm not going to sit up here and try to tell you I know what all the issues are. We don't know today what might happen next year. But I do have experience solving tough problems. I understand the infrastructure issues that the council is facing. I know what development opportunities that we have. And I think I'm uniquely qualified to be effective as a councilman. As the Chief Financial and Administrative Officer for Oklahoma State University, I've got 25 plus years of financial and administrative experience, which has frankly been helpful as we've dealt through these tough city budgets these last 3 years. Being an executive officer on the university's administrative team, I'm uniquely positioned to be able to take the message that the city has to the university and also share the university's view with city officials. And I think that's been an effective way to keep communication open and to eliminate problems before they even happen. Finally, I'm an incumbent. I've learned the ropes. I understand the language and the processes. Honestly, I have to admit that, when I first was elected, it took the better part of a year for me to figure out all the things that go on up here at City Hall. But I think now that I've been trained and I have had some experience, I'm ready to help serve the council move forward, and I appreciate your vote. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Micah?
I'm pretty new at this, so I'm not going to be quite as polished as Mr. Weaver here. My name is Micah Lefebvre. I'm new to local politics fairly. I moved here in 2006, 2007 to go to OSU. During that time, I really came to fall in love with Stillwater. I've lived in Oklahoma since 1999. And my real issue with the city is, well, let me just rephrase it this way. While I was working here, trying to work my way through school, I worked at a lot of minimum wage jobs and saw a lot of the issues that are kind of being ignored by local government, which are issues pertaining to low-income workers in this city. I really appreciate the effort that the City Council and local government has made to expand businesses in Stillwater. I think that's great. But they usually do that with the kind of a blind eye towards the actual workers at those businesses. And I feel like this is kind of a problem that just is rarely addressed. I obviously am not as adept at the languages and processes of being a city councilman, as is clear. But I do think that if I were to be elected as city councilman, I would be able to provide a voice for local, working class people that's just currently lacking. So, thank you.
Thank you. And Gina, elected to go first on opening for seat 2.
Hi, I'm Gina Noble, and I'm the candidate for seat 2. And I also want to thank the League of Women Voters for hosting this forum and for everybody for coming out tonight and asking questions. City government has more of an impact on our lives than any other form of government. The decisions we make today affect us in the future. There are a lot of important decisions to be made as Stillwater grows. I'm capable of making informed decisions, fair-minded decisions, and here's who I am. I'm a mom, first and foremost. I understand the importance of making responsible decisions for someone every day. I do it every day. My son is 16. He attends Stillwater High School. I'm the head of my household. I am a homeowner. I am a leader in my neighborhood. I'm a communications professional. Before I moved to Stillwater in 1999, I served as a vice president for a children's healthcare foundation. I've also worked for Children's Miracle Network and other healthcare foundations, and now I'm a professor in the School of Media and Strategic Communications at OSU, and I've been a professor for 11 years. I'm accessible. I listen and I respond promptly. I'm always going to encourage two-way communication between citizens and myself. I understand the importance of communication. I understand the importance of engaged citizens. I want Stillwater to become an attraction, a destination for people in Oklahoma and the region. It's possible with planned economic development, infrastructure, and a variety of jobs. It's also possible with quality of life issues. Economic development will increase a variety of jobs. It will create tax dollars for Stillwater. It will help attract us and people who want to live here. Land use is also an issue. I will study all sides of the issue when I'm making this decision. You can trust me to represent you with integrity, respect, and hard work. I'm committed to you, I am committed to Stillwater, and I'm committed to making Stillwater a destination, and I'm asking for your vote. Thank you.
Thank you. Philip?
Hi, I'm Filipina, and if anybody can't see me, I just moved this a little. Any problems? Okay, I'm the incumbent on seat 2, and I thank the league for inviting me here. I thank them simply because it gives me a chance to tell you what I feel that I can do for the city. I'm qualified to be the city councilor. I spent 4 years in Agra. Even though it's a small town, we still dealt with municipal politics, maybe sometimes robbing from Peter to pay Paul and those kinds of things. But that's where I learned a lot. I'm in a situation now, having been appointed to the city council. I've done this for about a year. And somewhat like Joe said, it takes about a year, maybe even a little longer to learn the ins and outs of how this system works. I think I've got it down now. I think I know what I'm doing. I'm asking you to vote for me because I think if you look at my record, if you've seen what I've done over the past, I think it's about 10, 11 months, it's been solid work. It's work where I've had to go out there and do research. It's work where I've talked to people. I've communicated with everybody. I'm accessible. I don't let anybody ask me a question, not get back to them. I sincerely love Stillwater. Now, based on my accent, I'm not from Stillwater, obviously. But coming out of the military and making some choices, choice number 1 was either Wichita, Lawton, or Stillwater. I came to Stillwater. I came to Stillwater, went to school in Stillwater, and that's the best decision I made. But more than that, I met you guys day to day, from your children to you personally, and you've given me so much. So therefore, I've got to give back. And for a year, I tried to give back. I've tried to do the very best that I could, and I believe I can do even better. The issues that I'm going to be looking at is to continue what we have: growth, quality of life, infrastructure, or improved infrastructure and economic development. I need your votes. Please vote for me. Thank you.
Thank you. Now we'll begin the question and answer portion. Again, if you think of a question, raise your hand. We'll get a card to you and a little golf pencil, and you can write it down on the card. Raise it again, and we'll pick it up, and they'll bring it up to me. Okay. Each candidate will have 90 seconds to answer each question, and we'll start with Joe, and we'll work our way down.
Okay.
And then Michael, you go first on the second one, and so on, and rotate. Okay? All right. First question. As a counselor, how can you involve more citizens on boards and committees?
Well, the way we have done it is we ask the community to, we announce when we have vacancies, and we ask them if they have any interest to submit an application. But honestly, a lot of times we have to go around the community and ask people if they'd be willing to serve. And that's a pretty effective way to get people involved, is just simply say, you know, hey, Kelly, would you be willing to serve on this board or that board? And often they'll say yes. And, you know, it helps to be a longtime member of the community, so you know a lot of folks, and you try to get good representation across the entire community, not just the university, but the city as well. And you just ask people to serve. And I have found that people really are interested and willing and able, and we currently have a pretty good, all our boards are pretty well staffed up. We're able to keep the positions filled, so I think we're doing a pretty good job in that area.
Thank you. Micah?
I think a lot of the committees, based on what I've seen at least, they seem to be kind of empty, the citizen committees, that is. I know I've applied to 1 or 2 in the past and never gotten a response. It's very difficult to contact anybody about that, you know, can make a final decision. I think that it's definitely necessary to go out and get community involvement in that kind of, in various areas, but I think there's just not enough of an effort currently put into staffing up those committees and keeping them active. I would encourage anyone to go out to the website and look at the community committees and just see how many canceled meetings there are just time after time after time. I think it's just something that we really need to put more of an effort into getting the community involved in and just keeping going.
Philip?
Well, I was born out of a committee in Stillwater, the Community Relations Committee. And like Joe, I've gone around and I've talked to people and I've asked them to join committees. A lot of times it's friends, it's other acquaintances that you run into. And I think the reasons why I want people to join a committee is when people come to me and they ask me a question, what about this? What about that? How do you do this? When are you going to do that? And what it boils down to is a lot of times people are very interested in knowing my answers. And I give answers, but at the same time, I turn around and say to them, you know, if you have that desire to be part of Stillwater, join a committee. Join that committee so that you have an impact, so you can represent your friends, and that impact will be carried forth to the Planning Commission and finally to the Chamber. What I really believe is that community involvement starts with committees. And if we can get a lot more people on committees, I think you're going to see a lot different change in the complexity of Stillwater. Thank you.
Gina?
I would promote the committees. I would absolutely make sure that the public understands what the responsibilities of the committees are. And I would talk to business leaders. I would talk to other leaders in the community. I would talk to people in the community, and I would promote it all with social media. If we don't use social media right now, we're losing an opportunity. So I would absolutely promote it. Start with social media, start with the websites in the city, and I would get the city to help promote it.
All right, next question. Involves public transportation. Is your topic? Micah, you'll go first.
Okay.
What is your position about the city of Stillwater, as opposed to OSU, providing public transportation to parts of town that are currently far away from OSU bus routes?
I'm a big proponent of public transportation. I really like the fact that, unlike a lot of small towns in Oklahoma, we do have, in conjunction with OSU, some public transportation, but it is really problematic that we're kind of beholden to OSU's bus routes, and we don't have anything for, you know, citizens on the edges of town or rural citizens. And I definitely think that we need to look into, maybe in conjunction with OSU if possible, maybe expanding their bus routes or getting a city-based public transportation system in place, because that is really a necessary thing in order to help, especially low-income Stillwater residents, just be able to live their life.
Philip?
I believe in the public transportation system that we have, but along with that, we just talked about committees. So I'm also looking at those people who are disgruntled about the system. Join a committee. Maybe that's where you need to be to help alleviate, to get that bus schedule broadened. And if people aren't talking to the bus people, if they're not talking about the needs, maybe it's on the outskirts of the city, if people aren't talking about that, the bus company themselves aren't going to turn around and say, okay, let's run a bus out there. So I think in conjunction with the idea that we have a great bus system, we need more input from people who need that particular transportation, and we need to bring that up into the light so that a lot more people can take advantage of our bus system.
Gina?
Okay. I don't think we need to duplicate something that we already have in place. Are there other places that we may need? Yes, but we need to find out what needs and where we need to go before we make a plan that might cause an extra expense to the city. Why can't city leaders and OSU work together? We're always partners. So if there's a need, maybe I think you address it that way rather than saying that the city also needs to provide buses for people. We're all in this together. We're partners.
Joe?
Well, I do have a little information on the bus system at OSU. Since long before I was on the council, the bus system was something that reported to me as an employee of OSU. And I'm very proud of the bus system that we've put in place. We rely heavily on a federal grant each year to provide the community routes. If it wasn't for those grants, we couldn't provide what we do. But it's by that agreement with the federal government that we provide that community transit service. And I can assure you that the staff, and I'll speak of Steve Spradling, is deeply committed to trying to deliver as quality a program as we can. But I can tell you that we can't make everyone happy, because we do have to consider cost, and we do have to consider, the number of users on a given route. Sure, the bus system is for the students, but it's also for the community, and we recognize that as an important mission as part of our bus system. But again, it's difficult to provide a service for every citizen in the community. But if you have a place you'd like us to try, we'd be happy to listen, and we reevaluate regularly.
Okay. All right, Philip, you'll go first on this next question. Given recent events, how would you improve safety for pedestrians, bicyclists, and people in wheelchairs?
Well, as you know, we have a system in place right now for bicycles on the street, Share the Road, and that's working. In terms of, part of that question talked about people in wheelchairs. Mm-hmm. If you look at most of our intersection where there's a crosswalk, those are accessible by people in wheelchairs. There was another part of it that we need.
Bicyclists, pedestrians,
And?
people in wheelchairs.
Okay. And in terms of pedestrians, if you look at most of our traffic systems and signals, you'll see that there's always that green light for everybody to walk across and so forth. I think Stillwater has done a very good job in terms of those issues that you just brought up. I have not had anybody complain. I have not had anybody come to me and say, we need to change or we need to do something different. We're doing the right thing. It may mean we might have to tweak something here, something there, but right now, Stillwater is doing a fantastic job in terms of bicyclists, people in wheelchair, and pedestrian crossings. Thank you.
Gina, do you need me to repeat the question?
No, I have it.
All right.
I think when you're dealing with bicyclists, pedestrians, and people in wheelchairs, there's always going to be a concern. And as Stillwater grows, there's always going to be those issues because traffic's going to grow. The city has done a wonderful job, and I think all in all protects citizens well. But I think that we're always going to have to listen to input from citizens and from the city and reevaluate every year. I also think that more public service education would be important and something that we can all learn from, and making sure that our students understand as they come onto campus what everything means, all of the signs, what they mean. So that's what I would do.
Okay. Joe?
Read the question for me.
Absolutely. Given recent events, how would you improve safety for pedestrians, bicyclists, and people in wheelchairs?
Well, I know that the city staff are evaluating intersections that are heavily trafficked, both by pedestrians, handicapped persons, as well as bicycles. We constantly need to review the situation and make improvements as we can with curb cuts for wheelchairs and the like. I can tell you that the university's recently announced a bike loaner program to encourage more students to ride bikes from wherever they live to the campus and vice versa. So the university and the city, as you've noticed with the sharrows that we've been putting out across the community, we've been trying to promote bicycle use and bicycle safety. The sharrows are just as much for the drivers to acknowledge vehicles as the bicyclists. A large component of this is education. Not everyone understands the rules of the roads, even bicyclists, and we need to do a little bit better job of educating people on the rules of the road, both for bicycles and for cars. But it's where we need to go. It'll make us a greener community. So I very much support the idea of the bicycle and Share the Road program.
Okay. Micah?
Yeah, I actually think Stillwater is a really bike-friendly community. They do a great job for bicyclists, pedestrians, and people in wheelchairs in general. I think you do see a lot of problems with education. I think you see bicyclists on the road where they don't need to be on the road when there's heavy traffic. And, I think that's a problem of lack of education of both the bicyclists and the motorists. And I think in general, Stillwater does a pretty good job of that, but we could definitely always provide more education.
All right, Gina, you'll go first on this next question. It's kind of a little bit of a follow-up. What committee do you recommend that citizens join that would be concerned with public transportation issues?
I'm just going to tell you that I don't know all of the committees, but I would think that any committee that has to do with public transportation, city issues, resident issues, citizen issues would be something that would listen to public transportation concerns, and also working again with the city to make sure that citizens' concerns are heard would be important. So I would recommend more research and for citizens to get involved by looking at all the different committees.
Well, I would have two suggestions that a person might want to consider. It's not a city committee, but we do participate with the Chamber of Commerce. They have an infrastructure and transportation committee, and they regularly address these sorts of issues. They bring speakers in when an issue's been raised, and they discuss it, and they make recommendations to the city. Another avenue would be go to Development Services, talk to Paula Dennison. She'd be happy to hear any issues that a person might want to bring up and try to address it. So there's two avenues to get input and to participate.
Micah?
I don't know as much about these particular committees as obviously Councilman Weaver does, but I would say that definitely any committee you get involved with, you should be able to have the ear of the city, and particularly those related to public health and transportation.
Philip?
I told you that I was born in a committee in Stillwater, and I'd like to see that committee revived. What it was the Community Relations Committee, and that committee works hand in hand with, let's see, how, best way of putting it. It works hand in hand with all components of the city, all components of the community. What it does is they try to air the grievances of the citizen and bring those to light, so to speak, and so that we can begin to talk and address the issues. That's a committee that really, if the participation is what it should be, becomes a very strong committee, and it really helps us on the council begin to do the things that we need to do. In other words, if the CRC brings something to us, we can really look at that and digest it and say, and the citizens have asked us for this, so therefore we take a second look. I particularly believe in that one particular committee.
Okay. All right, back to Joe going first. Okay, shifting gears a little bit here. What consistent principles should the City Council adhere to in making decisions about sales tax rebates as incentives for merchants and restaurants to locate in Stillwater?
What? I'm going back to the first sentence. What?
Okay, what consistent principles should the City Council adhere to
Gotcha.
in making decisions about sales tax rebates as incentives for merchants and restaurants to locate in Stillwater?
Well, I think there's a couple of things that we need to consider consistently as we consider those sorts of things. First of all, the city has just recently, in cooperation with the Chamber and with the university, recently created an Economic Development Council. In fact, the Chamber's just recently hired a fellow named Eric Fuller, who I think has a great deal of potential to help us attract industry, and the city has reassigned Angela to help recruit retail. So first of all, through that CDAC committee, we have to be recruiting things that are strategic and targeted to fill niches where we have a need that the city needs to meet. It's not about giving money away. It's trying to recruit and fill gaps where our citizens tell us we need to fill gaps. I don't think we need to necessarily bring businesses in here to compete with our existing businesses. That's really not particularly helpful. But when there's a particular industry or a particular retail that we don't have in Stillwater, that the people have told us they would like, I think we need to try to recruit it and listen to that CDAC group that I mentioned earlier and listen to them.
Thank you. Micah?
I think we do need to grow Stillwater businesses in areas that we need them, but I think it's important to not try to solicit businesses without first looking at how they're going to treat the community and how they're going to treat their workers. It's just kind of spitballing, but a good example of this is bringing in like Olive Garden, for example, which not only moved into direct competition with a local business in the same shopping center, but also provides fairly mediocre jobs and limited benefits for their workers. And I think we can just do a better job of bringing in more community-oriented businesses.
Philip?
Would you please repeat?
I will.
Thank you.
What consistent principles should the City Council adhere to in making decisions about sales tax rebates as incentives for merchants and restaurants to locate in Stillwater?
In order to bring merchants to Stillwater, there's going to be a time where we're going to have to give some kind of incentive. Recently, I've made the statement that I believe in a partnership kind of situation where that entity coming in says, okay, we'll do this for the city, and later on the city can do this for us. That partnership becomes a system where one is feeding off the other, but for the mutual needs of both. That to me sounds like a very good solution to the problem. We're not going to get away from some kind of incentives. That's going to be on the table most of the time. But if we can do more partnership and less tax breaks, if you want to call it that, then I think the citizens will respect it, and we will have a better working relationship with those companies coming in. I think that's very, very important for both the companies coming in and for the citizens themselves. Thank you.
Gina?
I think a long-term plan that's level, a level playing field for everybody is the first and foremost thing. I also think that the city's always going to have to consider existing businesses and make sure that their interests are considered. And we should always be looking for new complementary things that provide not only tax dollars, but quality of life for Stillwater citizens. And I think that we're always going to need to look for large companies, no matter the industry, high tech, that provide living wages with good benefits, because that's how you boost Stillwater, is to make sure that everybody has a good job. Always looking at quality of life, always looking at that level playing field, and never going down a slippery slope.
Thank you. Micah, you'll go next on this next question. Would you accept campaign donations from parties that bring business before the City Council? Why or why not?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that one more time?
Would you accept campaign donations from parties that bring business before the City Council? Why or why not?
No, I don't think there's any need to accept donations from someone where there might even appear to be a conflict of interest.
Philip?
Very much what Micah said. I'm in the position right now of running a campaign, and the first and foremost, I say I want everything to be above board and I want it to be legal. If you give me $10 for my campaign, I want to know that that's coming from you, that it's going to account, that the Ethics Committee can look at it and say, he did nothing wrong. I would not solicit any kind of funds from somebody that later on would say, hey, remember that contribution that I gave you? I need you to do this, that, and the other thing. I won't do that. The other thing is, I'm rather lucky than most because I'm from outside of Stillwater. I don't know who the big players and movers and shakers are. So therefore, I don't get into this, how carefully do I have to look at you and what do you want from me kind of thing. Everything's above board in my campaign. If you look at what I'm going to send up to the Ethics Committee, that should answer it. I have nothing to be ashamed of. I want honesty. I want transparency, even though that's a new buzzword everybody's using. I want that kind of transparency so people know that dollars that I've taken in are honest dollars. Thank you.
Okay. Gina?
No, that's a conflict of interest, and I'm always going to protect, first of all, my personal integrity, and I would never do that. I'm an independent thinker, and I make decisions independently, and I'm never going to let anyone think that they can influence my vote. No way. I would not do that. I don't owe anyone, and I never want to owe anyone. I'm independent.
Joe?
Stillwater's a small town. If a person doesn't accept a donation from someone that might have some business at some point, someday with the city, you won't raise any money. By that definition, a student at OSU couldn't donate money because they live in this town and they rent apartments. Yes, I'll take donations from someone that someday might have business with city, but I guarantee you that my votes are from my heart and from considered opinion, and they're certainly not bought. One thing, it is a luxury that I do work at the university. I'm not beholden to any industry segment of this community, other than I would say maybe perhaps the students at OSU. But we're all, as a community, indebted to all those students at OSU because so many of us, directly or indirectly, make our livelihoods because they're here in town.
All right. Let's talk a little about infrastructure. Philip, this next question, you go first.
Okay.
How can the city government ensure that roads and sidewalks are included in new developments, and what can be done about the existing damage to new roads and sidewalks?
This is a very good question. We just came out of a meeting last night talking about roads and how we're going to proceed and what methodology we should use. There's nothing set in concrete right now. We're just beginning to look at it. There's a pecking order of how we look at our roads, whether they're good, fair, poor, and there's another category in there, and then there's other categories that say which ones we'd like to attack first. But it's right now in the planning stage. We're trying to see what the need of the city is in terms of which roads take priority, how we make those determinations. And yes, for this infrastructure, if you're only talking about roads, or if we're talking about roads, we've got that system in place and we're working on it as we speak. And I think we're doing a very good job about just getting involved and finding out how we're going to do some of these things.
Okay, Gina?
Are you ready?
Yes.
Would you repeat the question, please?
Okay. How can the city government ensure that roads and sidewalks are included in new developments, and what can be done about the existing damage to roads and sidewalks?
Okay. I think, first of all, that city development and the city of Stillwater, the development services can help with the new developments and with roads and sidewalks, and when new developments are being built, that the city can absolutely make sure that that's being taken care of. As far as existing, we need funding mechanisms in place. We need to know where the money's going to come from. We need not only quality roads, we also, I know, need quantity of roads, and I know that the sales tax for transportation has, for the most part, provided for quantity of roads, but we're going to have to look at both, but the funding mechanism is what's going to be most important. So, city government, funding mechanisms.
Could you read the question again?
How can city government ensure that roads and sidewalks are included in new developments, and what can be done about the existing damage to roads and sidewalks?
Well, as far as applicants that are doing new developments, there are requirements that they have to put into their plan that have to be approved by Development Services in order for them to get the permits to start their project. So we've also gone to lengths to specify what is an acceptable sidewalk, what is an acceptable roadway, and before we'll accept it, we even inspect them to make sure they are standard and fit the code. And so I think Development Services is doing a pretty good job of ensuring that as developers build, they're building the infrastructure that we can accept and take care of going forward. There was a time, not recently, but there was a time in the past where roads were built substandard and they would be handed over to the city, and we were inheriting a maintenance problem. So we think we've addressed that. As far as tearing up roads or sidewalks, if a construction project takes place and they damage a road, they have to make it right before they'll get an occupancy permit or a use permit for their property. So I think the key is Development Services being on the job and taking care of the projects as they're developed and inspecting them at the appropriate intervals. And I think the city staff are doing a pretty good job in that area.
Micah?
Yeah, I think roads and sidewalks are always going to be included, necessary to be included in any development plans, and I do think Stillwater's doing a fine job with that now. I trust what Councilman Pena says about the good system we have in place for developing repair priorities for our roads and sidewalks and things like that. But I do also think that we probably need to budget a little bit more for infrastructure development and repairs. There are a lot of areas of this town where it's, stuff is just crumbling. And I don't think we're really putting as much money towards that as our citizens really deserve.
May I ask a question? Do we have a chance to tag on to that particular question? Or is it over?
That's,
It's over?
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a forum, not a debate.
No, I was just going to add something that the citizens might need to know, but I can tell them afterwards.
Okay, absolutely. Okay. The next question, let's see, we are on number 8. Gina, you'll go first. What is the greatest budgetary need of Stillwater? If the city had surplus funds, where should it go?
Right now, I think it should go to our roads, our transportation. There are a lot of needs, and I think that the city does a good job with the budgeting and the budget that it has. But infrastructure creates economic development. If you have good infrastructure, then you can bring in new companies and you can create new economic development, which creates new tax dollars, which creates a better quality of life. So I think that infrastructure, especially roads.
Well, I would say, if money fell out of the sky and we had, money to spend, infrastructure is obviously going to be a place the community is going to want to invest in. But as to roads, that's always going to be a place where we can spend money. But I can tell you the road condition, as it's been assessed, has actually improved over the last 5 years, and that's largely due to that half-penny sales tax that was put in place several years ago. We're starting to see the fruits of that, and the people voted that sales tax upon themselves to make those improvements. We'll have to continue with that. But we also have infrastructure issues with water and with sewer, and there's been quite a debate and discussion about quality of life initiatives. Should we have more recreational activities? I would hesitate to say this is the thing we should do, because I'd rather work as a team with other councilmen and with the mayor, get citizen input, and let's all together decide what those priorities should be and how we should deploy this windfall of funds that you're going to provide us.
I haven't won the lottery yet.
Okay. But I would want to take a team approach and a community involvement approach, and let's decide what problems we should solve together.
Thank you. Micah?
I think if surplus funds just happened, it would definitely, we would definitely have to look at upgrading our water systems. There's lots of issues with those, and anything else. I mean, obviously, we would want to get in community involvement, and I really do just think infrastructure is just the place to go for that.
Okay. All right. Let's see, we have time for one
I
more
answer that?
question. Did you answer that one?
I don't think so. I think
Nope, you are right.
Okay.
You did not answer that one.
Well, I'm a glutton for punishment, aren't I?
You are.
Yes, you are.
Okay.
Sorry.
You know, we've been talking a lot about infrastructure. Most people equate infrastructure with roads. Well, for me, infrastructure is roads, it's sewer, it's garbage, it's water. And then if you look at all those things with this money from heaven, so to speak, there's not one place that I'd put it, because if you look at all those entities, it all boils down to quality of life. And because it boils down to quality of life, we have to begin to look at it as a huge package. So I'm more like Joe. I think the council needs to get together. I think citizen input is very important. And when we do that, we can begin to say what we see as priorities. But infrastructure is not just roads. And I don't want to leave this audience thinking it's just roads, because that's the first thing we equate it to. It's so much more. And all of it combined becomes quality of life. And quality of life is definitely one thing that everybody in this room wants. They want better quality of life. So do I.
Okay. All right, we have time for one more question. And Joe, you'll go first on
Okay.
this one. Okay. How and why is the residential water rate continuing to increase, and what will you do to ease the overall strain?
Why the rates have increased has been a result of planning to try to make some of those infrastructure improvements that we all know are necessary and that we're so painfully aware of the past several summers, where we've had pressure problems and flow problems. We're trying to build the rates up to a point where the water system can maintain itself and sustain itself. But with that said, I'm very sensitive to the rates being increased over the past several years. I personally want to make sure that while we want to have a sound water system and we want it to be sustainable, we obviously don't want to make our rates to the point where they're not competitive, or that becomes an economic development issue. So, but the system is sound. The improvements are going to be in place, and we have a good plan for our water system. But unfortunately, it required us to raise the rates over a period of years.
Micah?
I think Councilman Weaver explained why the strain exists better than I ever could. But I don't necessarily agree that we should be passing so much of that utility increase on to to Stillwater citizens. I think there's plenty of places in budgets where we could probably transfer a little money over there and keep the rates at a more stable level while continuing to improve water infrastructure.
Okay. Philip?
Well, if we look at budgeting, it's a nightmare. Where does the money come from? You only have a pool of just so much money, and where do you put it? Everybody wants a piece of it, so therefore you do things like plan out how can we slowly but surely raise rates on water so that it was both sustainable and it can maintain itself. Other than that, we will have to come to you and ask for some kind of increase, some kind of tax, some kind of, whether they're a penny tax, three-quarter penny tax, whole penny tax, and I think you guys are tired of that. So what we've tried to do is we've tried to make a plan, and it has been a plan where incrementally we take a little bit more, a little bit more, a little bit more, so that we have a sort of like slush fund when problems occur, or for just general repairs, we have the money there. I think you feel it less that way than I would if I asked you to pass a one-half cent penny tax. I think that would have more opposition than the way we're doing it right now. And I think the way we're doing it right now is the correct way. It's proven itself to be good.
Gina?
It's my understanding that the city didn't have a good long-term plan for growth and for water for a long time. Improvements cost money. Prices go up, but our revenue hasn't. One way that we can hopefully fix that is as growth goes up and economic development increases, there's more tax dollars. And it's less of a burden on each citizen when you have more economic growth. So I say follow the long-term plan, make sure we're following it, and economic development to help with infrastructure and then with quality of life.
Thank you. We'll move on to closing statements. There were several questions I did not get to. Thank you. If your question did not get asked, you are welcome to ask them individually or float around and ask each of them. afterwards for a little while before we're all herded out of here. Okay. Person who went, we're going to do seat 2 first on closing. And Philip will go first on closing. We have 2 minutes.
Okay. I'm a Rotarian, and part of that Rotarian says there's a 4-way test. I won't bore you with all the components of the 4-way test, but there are 2 important components that I use. The first component is it truth? The second component, is it beneficial to all concerned? So when questions come up and when I have to make a vote, I use those 2 criteria to help me make my decisions. Yes, I've done the research, and yes, I've looked at Party A versus Party B versus Party C versus Party D, but the bottom line becomes, is it truth? Is it beneficial to all concerned? And because I believe in that system that I'm into, which means International Rotarian, I know that 99.9% of the time, it can help me with my answers. So therefore, I've already come up with an honesty for you, that the decisions I make are not just random decisions, but decisions that were born out of, is it truth? Is it beneficial to all concerned? You'll get that if you elect me. You'll get that same kind of tenacity that I've shown before if you elect me. I have no hidden agendas. I don't have any special cliques that I have to answer to. I'm going to give you the best possible service that I can. I think I've done it in the last 10 or 11 months. I plan to do it 3 more years. I want you to vote for me because I guarantee you that if you do, you're going to have a pretty cohesive council here. You're going to have a group of people that are looking out for your interest, because your interest is the same as my interest. I have family members here. I have kids in school here too. And so anything that I do is for their benefit, for their welfare, for your benefit, for your grandchildren's benefit. So when you elect me, you know what you've gotten, because I've got 11 months at least of past experience that you can draw upon. Thank you very much. Please vote for me.
Thank you. Gina?
Decisions in government affect us all and affect our quality of life. There are many important decisions to be made in the near future because Stillwater's growing. I've talked about economic development and infrastructure and quality of life, and how they're all interconnected and how you can't have one without the others. Is one more important than the other? No. People want to live in a city with good streets, good infrastructure. Businesses want the same thing. To attract economic development, we must have infrastructure in place that allows us to grow. But businesses and people also want quality of life. Things that we do when we're not working. It's when we're at play. It's opportunities for young and old. It's opportunities that also create tax dollars. Quality of life goes beyond what we do when we play. It's also about where we live and the protection and security of our investments. Established businesses need to know that they are equally important in Stillwater's plan to grow. We are obligated to equally consider the wishes of those who have made Stillwater what it is today, those who have already invested in Stillwater. New development is extremely important, and I absolutely support it. But I also support established residents and existing businesses. There's a way to do both, and there's a way to be fair. When you go to the voting booth on April 2nd, vote for someone who values fairness above all else. Vote for someone who will represent all interests equally. Vote for someone who can make decisions when decisions must be made, and then stand by those decisions. Vote for me, Gina Noble, seat number 2. Thank you.
Okay. On seat 1, Micah elected to go last, so Joe will go first on closing. Is that what we agreed on?
I think I went first on opening.
Okay.
Oh.
You are, yes, you are correct.
Okay. there's a lot of issues facing Stillwater, and I don't claim to know the intricacies of them all. Obviously, I don't. But I've been a resident of Stillwater for a while now, and I know the kind of issues that face the people that, you know, are working minimum wage jobs and don't have health care and don't have a way to get around, and there's a lot of problems there. And I think that if you vote for me, you'll get somebody who's going to look at every issue that faces the city or the city council with a lens of how it's going to affect the little guy and not how it's going to affect, you know, business necessarily. But, well, business is necessary, but it's not my main goal as a city councilman.
Ready?
Okay.
Again, I want to thank the league for sponsoring this event. It's a great service to the community, and you should be commended for it. I'm going to say again, Stillwater is a great community. We have so much to be proud of. Sure, we have problems, we have infrastructure issues, but so do so many other cities do as well. This is a great place to be. When I travel the state and I tell people I'm from Stillwater, they're envious. They know Stillwater's a great community. They know it's a destination. We have something to be proud of, and we need to protect it, and we need to maintain it. I look forward to the opportunities ahead to continue to make Stillwater grow and prosper. But with all that said, I'm not going to sit up here and try to tell you I know everything and I have all the answers, because I don't. I know I don't. But I am willing to commit to you that I'll do the homework, I'll show up to the meetings, I'll do my level best to put Stillwater first in every vote that I cast. Again, I'd ask you to vote for me, Joe Weaver, on April 2nd for seat 1. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you to the League of Women Voters for volunteers for hosting this event, especially our timekeepers, Joanna and Deanna, and our question screeners, Beth and Kay, and our other volunteers that helped ferry the questions around. If you would like to know more information about the mission of the League of Women Voters, talk to one of us, or you may visit lwvstillwater.org. Again, voting early on Friday, this Friday, from 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. at the County Administration Building on the 2nd floor, and on Monday from 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. at your polling place on April 2nd. If you need to know where your polling place is, please contact the Payne County Election Board. They can be found at paynecounty.org, or you can find, I should have the phone number memorized.
Go to 6th and Duck.
You could go to 6th and Duck. I apologize for not having my script and all my things in front of me. Thank you to the City of Stillwater for the facilities and for recording this. It will be available, broadcast daily on the City of Stillwater channel, and I believe it will also be put up on the city account on the YouTube, so you can spread it around to folks who don't have AT&T Uverse or Suddenlink cable. So, thank you and have a good evening.
Thank you, League of Women Voters.